Tribe, welcome to Halloween After Dark. Got some good stuff for you tonight. Bit of a recap show. Paranormal True Crime. Uh, for those that have been listening for a while, you're probably familiar with some of this content, such as Edward Wayne now I'm all tongue-tied. Edward Wayne Edwards, who is quite possibly the most prolific serial killer in American history, responsible for some very high-profile cases, if what we believe to be true is actually true. And I'll get into that in a little bit. We're going to talk about the mystery of H.H. Holmes and some new developments that have come to light concerning his case. Many of you may know H.H. Holmes. He was considered by many to be America's version of Jack the Ripper. He actually had built a hotel, and the entire hotel was basically a death trap. Think like something akin to like what Jigsaw does in the Saw movies. But his whole hotel was built that way. Like it had trap doors that led into like pits and secret passages everywhere, so you could sneak from room to room. Stuff like that. And everything was booby trapped. He had blade saws and like the pendulum, from Pit and the Pendulum, the huge blade that swings back and forth. He had shit like that all over this hotel. And he had victimized estimated upwards of 200 people, ending right around the time of the Chicago World's Fair. And when people found out about it, they burnt his hotel to the ground. But he had disappeared. They never found him. Much like Jack the Ripper. Now, two new theories have come to light. Sorry, I actually just got home from work not too long ago, so I'm still kind of getting settled. So there's two new theories that have come to light. One alludes to the possibility that perhaps H.H. Holmes and Jack the Ripper not only knew each other, but were in cahoots. That they had cooked up this mass murder, if you will. Okay, allow me to explain where this theory is coming from. It was actually verified recently that H.H. Holmes had actually visited London just prior or just previous to the first killings attributed to Jack the Ripper. It is also just come to light that they sort of ran around in the same circles. Like we know now, it was actually proven, even though, closed-minded fucktards always like to, piss in the Kool-Aid, so to speak. So they're trying to dispute it now. but it was actually proven through DNA evidence that Jack the Ripper was in fact a Jewish born uh, immigrant to the London area who worked as a butcher and had some medical experience by the name of Aaron Kosminski. Um, there is evidence to suggest that H. H. Holmes, or the person we knew as H. H. Holmes, and Aaron Kosminski may have had some previous dealings with each other, which would allude to the fact that um, both series of murders were, in essence, set up. The second theory is that H. H. Holmes was mentored by Aaron Kosminski, and the goings on in Chicago were his way of breaking out onto his own, i.e., the little psychotic serial killing bird leaving the nest. Now, I know what you're thinking. What does all this have to do with paranormal? Well, I'm glad you asked. In the case of Jack the Ripper, I have stated this before in previous episodes. I'm going to state it again because I think these guys did not get the credit that they fucking deserve. There was a short-lived paranormal TV show called Killer Contact, in which this group of paranormal investigators went all over the world trying to solve the mystery behind some of the biggest killings in history. Um, and their very first episode, they were taking on the case of Jack the Ripper, trying to solve, uh, firstly, who he was, and secondly, if there were more victims than we were aware of, which we now can't prove it, but we now believe is highly possible. Um, so during this episode of the show, um, by using a K2 meter or an EM meter as a means of communicating, uh, m- much the same way you've seen people do with flashlights, where they make the flashlight come on and off, only arguably even more trustworthy and precise because it is much harder to manipulate electromagnetic fields um, as a person without being obvious about it. Um, so they were asking these questions, and through a process of elimination, they'd asked, because Aaron Kosminski actually was one of the suspects, they asked if he was Jack the Ripper, and they got an affirmative. Presumably by one of the victims of Jack the Ripper, Elizabeth Curry. Now, what's interesting about all this is if that is true, they discovered the identity of Jack the Ripper a full year before DNA did, which should have every paranormal group in the world up in arms, you know, basically getting in the face of the closed-minded, uh, you know, scientific types that have done everything to discredit us because that totally validates us. That's our window into saying, hey, look, see, this is for real. So, kind of a missed opportunity there. Um, in any case, the guys from Killer Contact deserve like all the credit in the world for that. They really do, and nobody even remembers them for the most part. In any case, um, the other part of it is that that same air of mystery around Jack the Ripper surrounds H.H. Holmes because we now know that that's not even his real name. They have no idea what his real name is. They do know that he used several aliases. So, short of finding his remains and doing DNA testing and there's really no way to definitively solve that riddle in the scientific way that would actually satisfy even the most closed-minded people. But it is highly logical, if you really think about it, that they did have some kind of association with each other because for years, um, people thought that they were one and the same. We now know that's not the case, but for a very long time, people thought that. So it's interesting, and there is some suggestion that perhaps the spirit of H. H. Holmes himself haunts the area and where the hotel stood. There is something else there now, and I don't remember what right off the top of my head. And I'm not going to look it up right now because my computer actually is acting all hinky. Um, which happens sometimes, I guess. Hey, knock it off. Rats. Anyways, sorry, talking to the cats. Onwards and upwards. A big time Hollywood mystery for years has been the death of George Reeves. Um, hold on one second. Let me see if I can pull this up. God damn. What the fuck? Okay, I guess not. Hold on one sec. What the fuck is this thing now? What are you doing? Okay, I guess not because my computer's acting all fucking retarded. Um, so I, what the fuck is going on? I may have to actually restart my computer, folks, which means I'll have to disconnect and get right back to you as soon as possible. So hang tight. I will be right back.